are just started. Episode 95 of NoLaughTrack. This is Justin Severson, and thank you to Circle of Heat for letting us play the music there at the beginning of the show. As always, I'm here, return guest from episode 37, now to 95. He was here, I believe we recorded the day before Valentine's Day in 2013.
That's right.
Yes, and now we're in the middle of April 2014. Will Anderson.
It's a special day for Australians today. Not technically here in the US, but like it's already Friday in Australia as we record.
Oh, that's true.
And in Australia, it's a day called Anzac Day, which is our kind of, I guess it's the equivalent of like Veterans Day or something like that, but also of like maybe 4th of July.
Okay.
So we have like a national public holiday and they have a long weekend, and it's probably our biggest, people enjoy and celebrate Anzac Day more than they celebrate Australia Day. Like it's a bigger event. Because Australia Day comes with some baggage. Because Australia Day, like the Indigenous people call Invasion Day.
Oh!
Because it's basically Australia Day celebrates a bunch of English people coming and taking the land from the Indigenous people. Whereas Anzac Day celebrates our like veterans and our people who died in our wars. And so it's kind of a special, significant day.
Anzac?
Anzac. A-N-Z-A-K or Z-A-K as you guys would, A-C, sorry, as you guys would say.
Nice.
Anzac, so A-N-Z-A-C, Anzac. It was Australian and New Zealand Armed Corps it stood for.
Okay.
So our soldiers in the war were called the Anzacs. We now have Anzac biscuits or cookies, as you guys would say.
Yes.
So they have a day and a cookie, basically, and it celebrates or commemorates, probably is a better word, our most famous battle, which is a battle that was made into a movie that had Mel Gibson in it called Gallipoli. And Gallipoli is probably our most famous sort of battle, but it was the day that a kind of Australia formed its own identity. We were sent to the wrong beach by the British, commanders and then we had to fight the Turks up the hill, and like it was a mudslide and a hill, and all these people died. But it's become, sort of our most famous war story.
What would you be doing if you were back in Australia then tomorrow?
So basically,
you'd be just sleeping in.
No. Well, hopefully you get up early. Like if you're really committed. I have not done this for years since my granddad died, who fought in the war.
Okay.
But a lot of so this is interesting. If you perform for the troops overseas, you can technically march on Anzac Day. Oh. So they have the dawn service, which commemorates, the people who died.
Sure.
And then they have an Anzac Day march, to the War Memorial, and each city and town will have their own Anzac Day march.
Wow, sounds huge.
So you get up at like 6 in the morning, and so they have Anzac Day. So all my comedian friends who've actually performed for the troops technically can march on Anzac Day. They don't. Because it's disrespectful when there's like some 90-year-old guy who fought in the Second World War, and then there's some comedian who told dick jokes to strangers in Afghanistan, But
hey, I lost a leg too, buddy. No, you didn't.
Right? Yeah, I died. Well, I died on stage. Like I didn't die in the war, but I died in a war zone.
I've lost friends too, man.
Yeah.
I mean, because they weren't good at comedy, not because they were killed.
That's right. You don't know what it's like, man. You weren't there. So then, for the rest of the day, what the old diggers? That's what we call our. And I should point out that's with a D.
There you go. Thank you.
Because this is an American podcast.
Thank
and
you. Diggers.
Diggers. Our diggers, which is what we called our soldiers, our diggers. They will spend the rest of the day playing a game called Two Up. Which is two up is illegal on every other day of the year because it's gambling, right?
Oh,
It's a coin game. They toss 2 coins, and it's what they used to play back in the war. But on Anzac Day, it's legal, so you can play two up anywhere on Anzac Day.
Is it like a pick what it lands on? And
yeah.
Then, okay. Yeah.
It's like our equivalent of the Purge. We have one day a year where it's just legal to play two up everywhere. So people will be drinking and playing two up and commemorating our soldiers in Australia as they celebrate a big long weekend. Back home.
Well, for all of your fans back there listening, enjoy Anzac Day.
Yeah,
Anzac
exactly.
Day. Yes. What the heck was I going to ask you? You were here last night. This is day number 2 of
day
you
2
in Minneapolis.
Yes, I was in Australia 3 days ago. I was in Melbourne 3 days ago. Melbourne to Minneapolis, the most direct route. And yeah, I started last night. It was a brilliant show. Just behind where you're sitting on stage, there was a guy in the front row, and he came in a little bit late, and so obviously I started talking to him, and he was like a very sort of I'm going to say mid-40s, maybe late 40s sort of guy, proper mustache. Like a man's mustache.
Yeah.
Not like a wild hillbilly mustache. Not like some crazy sort of I've gone weird for Movember mustache. Just like a face that deserved a mustache.
I gotcha.
You know, like that sort of, just a guy who went, if you didn't have a mustache, I would imagine you had one anyway. Right? And so I say to the dude, I say, what's your name? And his name's Bob, B-O-B, right?
Yeah.
Now, you guys don't say Bob like I say Bob. You say Bob like this, apparently. Bob. I'm like, how many O's does your name have? Do you have the Olympic rings? Like there's a B, and then there's just like someone, they had a stroke and held down the O, and then there's like a B somewhere eventually. I think that's Boob. I think your name's Boob, not Bob. Yeah. So Bob, Bob.
Yeah.
Bob down the front, he was a cool cat, and I was like kind of building him up, talking about how manly he was and how impressive he was. And I said, "What do you do, Bob?" And he was a cop.
Of course.
So yes, he was. It was definitely like as soon as you knew it, you saw it.
That mustache was actually part of his uniform.
Right.
He has to have that.
Right, yeah. It's compulsory. Yeah, when you leave the force over here, you have to hand in your badge, your gun, and your mustache.
And it's not shaved off. It's just yanked off.
Right. Yeah. When you got 5 days to retirement, they're like, I've only got 5 days to retirement, then I can get rid of the mo.
You were, I was reading, you were at the Melbourne Film International Comedy Festival?
Yes.
That's what was going on?
That's where I was, yes.
Yeah. How many nights do you perform? Something like that?
Yeah, okay. So I've been doing that festival. The Melbourne Comedy Festival is the third biggest comedy festival in the world. And it has around 400 different shows that go on for a month. Well, 4 weeks, basically. And they have about 800,000 people go and see shows during that time.
Wow.
So my show, I did 24 nights of the show.
Wow.
In a 1,000-seat theatre, so 24 nights in a 1,000-seater. So basically, I went home. I did Adelaide Fringe for 2 weeks. I did Brisbane Comedy Festival for a week, and I did Melbourne Comedy Festival for a month. And so I start that tour with no show, as in I've never done this new show that I'm doing before. Literally in Adelaide, the first night of previews is the first night I tell all those jokes in front of people.
Wow.
And then I did 45 shows in 46 days. So by the end of that, hopefully you have a pretty tight 70 or 80 minutes of new material. So I ran about 20 or 30 of that during the show here last night, and it all seemed to go really well. So I was really happy and excited that I've got a bunch of new stuff. So
20 or 30, okay, you just said you hope to have 70, but then you did 20 or 30.
Well, here.
Because you're going back to the...
Well, I mean, mostly here, because it's what I wouldn't want to do here is no one in the audience last night had seen me before.
Okay.
So what I don't want to do is those jokes all worked in Australia. That's my new hour. And hopefully maybe, in a few weeks, maybe it could all be that material.
Yeah.
But on the first night, I'm not just going to go, here's all my new stuff. On the first night, I'm just going to go, here's some stuff I know works really well. Now that I've got you with that sort of 10 minutes of that, and now that I've, got you with a bit of fun with Bob over here, now I'm going to get into the brand new stuff. So I reckon as the nights go on, each night now that I kind of go, well, all that stuff works, I can keep introducing more and more new stuff.
Fun with Bob.
With Bob.
People are getting another taste of that Minnesota Midwestern accent that TV show Fargo has started.
Now, that's not what you guys sound like, though.
It's exaggerated.
It's not what you sound like. It's like what they made the Australians sound like in, what was that horrible Rock'em Sock'em robot movie that came out this year? The fighting robots, the big robots that
Hugh
fought.
Jackman?
No, not that one. It was the big robots. It was like a massive movie that came out and they were fighting. It was like a Godzilla movie. There was robots fighting. It had the guy from Sons of Anarchy in it. And it was it had Idris Elba in it. People are shouting at the podcast now.
Sorry, I don't know.
Anyway, they had 2 Australians in it that weren't Australians. They were people doing Australian accents. And so that's what it sounds to me like when I watch this TV show Fargo in particular, is I'm like, people don't sound like that here.
No.
People just sound happy here. That's what your accent sounds like. I can't imagine what it's like to get angry at someone here because... everything sounds so happy. Everyone sounds so nice, I must be very confusing to be a gay man here because I reckon a lot of the men sound like they're gay. And I don't mean that, do you mean they're just polite and they're well-spoken and they seem to care about what you're going on about?
Well-spoken used to be code for gay. And now it's just
now it's Minnesotan. He's so well spoken. He's either gay or he's from Minnesota.
I'm flattered either way.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Willamette
Illuminati?
Illuminati.
It's very hard to say.
I wrote it down thinking I'm not going to have trouble remembering how to pronounce this, and then I think I did not spell it phonetically, so...
Right. Well, it's one of those things where when I have to come up with a name for my new tour, it's normally about, so the way the schedule works with the festivals in Australia is I have to get in the name of my show for the Adelaide Festival in about August. Now, I don't finish my tour that I'm currently on. So the Illuminati tour won't finish until December, this year. Basically, I started at 1st of March and it goes to sort of, second week of December. Like I tour for that long. So on that but in August, you have to come up with the name and title for your new tour. I haven't even started thinking about that at that point, right?
Yeah.
So it's always a wheel pun, and I always just come up with a name.
Yeah.
And what I did not do, I thought, Illuminati, that's great. Like the Illuminati, that's a fun name for a show. That gives me lots of potential. Whatever I want to talk about in the show, that's going to work. And I never said it out loud. And I have no trouble saying it because I'm like, Illuminati. It makes sense to me. But what I've realized in 8 weeks of doing press around the show is a lot of people have trouble saying it.
Yeah, you know what? And every time I read it this morning in the last week, I nailed it. And then I wrote it down here and it looks like Williminati.
Yeah.
Like, what was I doing there?
No, there were so many Australian radio announcers who I had great interviews with, and when they tried to plug the show, it sounded like they had a stroke. It was like, are you okay? Do I need to hold your tongue? Illuminati. It's like Illuminati, but with the W. It's easy.
I listened to you on another podcast, not yours, but I on Doug Loves Movies.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, you were really good.
It was, you know what? It was one of those nights where, as a performer, because I won't give away too much of it. But
we can talk about it. It's like 2 months old.
Yeah,
now.
and Mark Wahlberg isn't really Mark Wahlberg, but it's a
quotation marks
right.
Mark Wahlberg,
and he was hilarious. But it's like one of those things where comedy, and this is the interesting thing about comedy, is that you've got to, and this is something I'm very glad of, that it's taken me probably 20 years to get to this point, where that was my first time on that show, and I love that show. I listen to it all the time.
I do.
I'm a really big fan of the show.
Yeah.
And so I was really excited to be on. But then I was on that night with someone who was dominating. And when I say dominating, I don't mean in a mean-spirited way, like someone who was being hilarious.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, in those situations, you have, and actually Rory Scovel was on as well, who's a brilliant stand-up comedian. So in one of those situations, your natural inclination is you go, I want people to think I'm great. You know what I mean? I want to be, but when someone else is being great, and I know as a listener myself, the worst thing you can do is try to jump on or get in the way of that.
I could tell, Will, you were holding back.
You try to facilitate because I always think if you walk away from a show and everyone thinks the show was funny, everyone goes, oh, well, you were all funny.
Yeah.
Whereas the only thing you can really do sometimes is put a handbrake on someone else being funny by going, I want to be in this. I want everyone to think I'm the most important person. I don't think that 10 years ago, definitely, maybe not even 5 years ago, I would have known how to behave properly in that situation to help out the show.
Yeah.
And that's one of the more interesting things about comedy is that sometimes your job is to be like, when I'm doing stand-up and like I'm here headlining a club, I've got to come out. Like the audience last night, for example, were a little bit quiet at the start. The two acts who were on before me were both doing a great job, but it was just a bit of a Wednesday night, we're going to sit and watch the comedy.
Sure.
Now, my job in that situation is not to allow that to continue like that. My job is to come out and go, all right, now, like, here, I'm here and this is what they're paying me to do.
Yeah.
And grab it by the balls and make it work, right? That's my job.
Yeah.
But in other situations, when you're part of an ensemble or a team player, sometimes your job's not that. Sometimes, you've just got to be, to use a football analogy, not everyone can be the quarterback and not everybody can be the person scoring, the try. But but they can't do that unless there's a lot of other people doing their jobs as well. And I think that's something that as I've got older and as I've got more experienced, I've probably at least got a little better at.
There's I was impressed by your knowledge, as was everyone on that episode of Doug Loves Movies, your knowledge of Police Academy movies.
Although I was disappointed that the one that I didn't know was the one that they got me with. That was the amount of time since then that I have like Mission Miami Beach. Oh my God, I'll never forget it again. For the rest of my life, I will know that one is in my head.
You're never going to forget the name of that terrible, awful, bad movie.
I'm not sure that I've seen the Miami Beach one, actually. That's about the only one that maybe it was Assignment Miami Beach anyway.
I remember the previews when that movie was about to hit theaters, and there was a scene with the he's like the commandant, the guy with he had the very hairy chest, and
Right.
they put sunblock
Oh,
on him, and I think it said dork or something
Right.
like that. So
Yep.
he was all sunburned, and then it was just blocked out.
No, I was always I'm a big believer that Citizens on Patrol, the Police Academy 4, is the highlight of that. It starts so well. It's got all the the skateboarding scenes at the start with like Tony Hawk and Steve Cavallero and all these guys doing this cool skating thing, and then
right.
it's actually a really kind of funny film. Anyway, Police Academy 4.
Have you ever met any of your heroes from the Police Academy movies?
You know what? That's an interesting thing that you asked me. I recently, in fact, I've done a couple of gigs with Bobcat Goldthwait.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Bobcat and I have done. There's a show called Set List that I'm sure some people will be familiar with, which is a improvised stand-up comedy show.
Yeah.
So the conceit is that you walk out on stage and you do it as if it's your set, but you don't know what you're going to talk about. So the topics will come up one by one on screen, and they're always, really. Full-on offers. Like, for example, one of the ones I got once was Jehovah's Rapist.
Oh, boy.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then you're meant to just do a joke as if that's your routine.
Right.
And you can't do your own material. Use your imagination, not your material. That's the motto. So you've got to try to go. And so I think my joke on that occasion was look, to be honest, if I ever encounter a Jehovah's Rapist, I just hope there's a Jehovah's Witness. Right?
That's good.
And it takes you to a place where you can... like the other night when I was playing it, I got Third Reich Casual Friday.
Oh, boy.
And no, that one's quite good because it's a very simple one to go, look, to be honest, the uniforms were the only thing they had going for them. So Friday, they were particularly terrible. But Bobcat and I have been doing that show a lot together. So I did
And
it.
that's in LA.
So I did it at UCB in LA with him, but recently we did it together at San Francisco Sketch Fest and at Cobb's there, and it was like 500 people in the room, and Gilbert Gottfried was on,
Wow.
and a bunch of other really, really top class acts. In fact, Mark Wahlberg was on doing Set List that night as well, and it was absolutely. Brilliant fun. But so Bobcat in particular is the one that I've kind of run into and worked with a bit.
So you're filling your time these days. Like you said, you just were back in Australia working, doing all these festivals. How long have you lived in the United States?
So, this is coming up to I guess it's nearly 4 years now.
Jeez.
On and off,
Yeah.
So out of that 4 years, I've probably been here nearly 2 years now.
Yeah.
And so this year's the first year where I I didn't buy a house. I just rented a new place in December last year. But this is the first time I've had furniture. It's because I decided, okay, well, this is... Basically, the first year I came over, I did 3 months. The second year I came over, I did 4 months.
Okay.
The third year I came over, I did 5 months.
Yeah.
And so this year's the first year where I'm spending more time in America than I spend anywhere else,
Yeah.
right? So I thought, okay, well, I'm here officially now, right?
Yeah.
So I rented a place in LA. I decided I was going to buy furniture and actually set myself up. It sounds so exciting at the start, having an empty, because I have nothing. I have a house and stuff at home, so I left everything there.
Right.
I'm starting from scratch. And it sounds so exciting at the start. You're like, brilliant, I can buy a TV,
Yeah.
and I can buy a couch, and I can get a new bed, and all that stuff is fun. And then all the not fun stuff happens because you realize you have to buy a bin for under the sink and toilet paper. You're like, am I spending my money on these cleaning products? A mop? I need a mop and a broom? What sort of society is this?
I just bought my first a mixer to make, because it's one of my daughter's birthday this weekend, and I want to make a cake.
Right.
And then I read the instructions
Right.
and realized I couldn't just stir it. And I needed to
You
buy
needed
a real mixer.
Yeah, right.
So I bought my first mixer last
Nice.
night. Yes.
I have a salad spinner.
Salad spinner.
Yeah.
Though, have you ever actually used it?
Yeah, I have one. Say people think they're useless. Your salad spinner.
I bought one for my mom for Mother's Day,
Right.
and I've never seen her use it.
I enjoy a salad, and I enjoy my salad spun. No, I like a salad spinner. We once on radio, this will sound like the worst radio segment of all time, and it kind of was, but it was also because it was so stupid, it was hilarious.
Yeah.
The guy I was doing radio with and we had an argument one day about the salad spinner because I'm a big fan of the salad spinner. And he was like, you can dry lettuce quicker, just by using a towel or just drying it, right? Than a salad spinner. I'm like, no way. So we decided that we would test it.
No, you didn't.
Yeah. But not just that. We wanted the quality of the lettuce to come into it as well. Because I didn't want to just damp it down with a towel because then it would be it would taste bad. Sure, it's dry.
Right.
But it's going to taste taste. It's not going to taste right. That's the salad spinner. It freshens it up. So we got in. So we dried the lettuce on air. But we got in. Our judges were. We thought, who are the experts when it comes to lettuce? So we had like a model. We had this girl from Australia's Next Top Model who won that.
Works.
So we got her in because we thought a model knows about lettuce.
Yeah.
And we got a rabbit. And and so we dried our lettuce, and then we got the model to try which one she liked, and then we put the lettuce in front of the rabbit, and whichever one it went to, we decided was the winner. But my favorite moment of that whole show, because we did it over an hour, we made it this big deal, was when we came back from the song, and the other guy that I worked with had to do the reset. He goes, it was one of my favorite lines ever on radio. He goes, if you just tuned in, we're drying lettuce.
We have a caller here that has a question for the rabbit. Bob? Right. Bob, do you have a question? Wow. That's a first. I've never.
No.
I don't think that'll ever be duplicated.
Innovative,
anywhere. Was there a consensus? I have to know.
Yeah, the spinner.
The spinner.
That's why I've got a spinner now in America too. Spins the other way in Australia though. I should point that out.
Stop.
Doesn't. That's a joke. It's a joke.
Usually I'm a sucker for things like that, but I knew you were goofing me right there. I know a lot of comedians do this. Do you have set up a Google alert for your own name to see what pops up there?
No.
But you've heard that before, right?
I understand what the concept is, but no, I don't. I am so my name's used a lot in Australia, and I don't want to know when people are using it. I just have no interest. I don't like to read things about myself in general, good or bad.
Yeah.
You find out enough about them anyway. Being on Twitter and stuff like that, people will reply your stuff or even reviews and stuff when you're in a festival or whatever. Because I try to avoid all reviews, good or bad, during the festival, because you don't need other people's opinions getting in your head when you're trying to film.
Right.
The only thing you should be listening to is the audience and your show.
Yeah.
Because they're the two things that will tell you where the show needs to go, right? But you particularly don't need to hear the opinion of one person who probably didn't even pay for a ticket.
Yeah.
They're the least, even if it's good, even if it's someone saying this is the best show that I've ever seen in my life, it's not. Part of the process is that I should be constantly working on the show. Mm-hmm. So if someone says this is the perfect show, then part of me is well, I don't have to work on it anymore. So I don't like to see any of it. But what's happening these days is people will even reviewers and stuff will reply you on Twitter with their reviews. And I'm I don't want to read your review. I don't want to. Why are you replying me? It's bad form.
Read this.
Right, yeah.
Well, I had an interesting one come up for you with the name Will Anderson. The 1972 movie The Cowboys.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The John Wayne movie.
Yeah.
Now, I've never seen this, but people keep telling me that his name is Will Anderson. Is that right?
Uh-huh. Yeah. It says, here's a description of the movie. Now, you were born after 1972.
Oh, 1974. That's right.
Yeah. You were named after this. Your dad, wasn't he a farmer?
Yeah.
Not a cowboy.
Not a cowboy. Well, technically, he farms cows.
See?
And he was at one stage a boy. In fact, he farmed cows on a farm when he was a boy. Oh my God, he is a cowboy.
See? Well, it says when his cattle drivers abandon him for the gold fields, rancher Will Anderson is forced to take on a collection of young boys as his Yes.
That sounds...
Yeah, what are you doing, Will? Yeah. As his drivers in order to get his herd to market in time to avoid financial disaster. Yeah. The boys learn to do a man's job under Anderson's tutelage. However, neither Will Anderson nor the boys know that a gang of cattle thieves is stalking them.
Oh, hang on. Yeah. Trouble.
Stalked by cattle thieves.
I have never been stalked by cattle thieves. Here's a couple of things I know about my name. Firstly, that it was in this John Wayne movie. I know that. Mm-hmm. The second thing is I know that there is a popular Hollywood celebrity who whose real name is my name, who changed their name because they didn't like the name Will Anderson. Thought they could get nowhere.
Who was that? I think you told me that last time.
Adam West. TV's The Batman.
Right.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're my two Will Anderson facts that I have.
That is right. So when you're spending time back in...
when I'm doing time?
When you're doing
when
time?
I'm back home doing time.
So you're on work release now, correct?
Yeah, we're all convicts. Everyone from Australia is still a convict.
When you're spending time back in California... And you're not? Are you you trying to get it back on television? I know you have somewhat of a TV and radio background back home in Australia.
Yeah, no.
Are you trying to get something going here?
No, not really.
No,
no. In fact, I'm having a year off my TV show at home, so I can just concentrate on stand up.
Okay.
Basically, what I've been dreaming of doing for the last 20 years really since I started doing stand-up. I started working in the media in Australia when I was 25. So for the last 15 years, like I did a radio show for 6 years, and then I did a TV show that went for 6 years, and then I did another radio show that was like 2 years, and then I've been doing this current TV show for 6 years.
Which one is that?
The Gruen series.
Okay.
So like it changes its name a lot. So it was originally the Gruen Transfer, then it was Gruen Planet. We did one about the Olympics, which was called Gruen Sweat. We did one around the election, which was called Gruen Nation. So we kind of adapt but it's always called Gruen something.
Okay.
And so we've done 6 years of that. So we're having a year off that this year, and we'll probably do another series in 2015. But basically, because for the last 15 years, as my stand-up career has grown, all I ever really wanted to do, because all I've ever wanted to do was be a stand-up, right? And it's getting to the point in my life where if I want to be a really good stand-up, like if I really want to, you can't do it part-time. Like if you want to get really good at something, like it's like one of those things like you wouldn't imagine like an NBA, no one wants an NBA basketballer to be like, oh yeah, but LeBron has like another job. Like, he has another job that he's that good, but he also has another job. And I think that's what it's like with comedy. I'm certainly not comparing myself to LeBron, but I'm just saying that if you want to be of that level, then I think that you've got to spend some time. Now, that doesn't mean that at some stage that I don't want to then go back and do television stuff. But I don't think there's any point for me, jumping into something that would stop me from working on and concentrating on my stand-up. I'd rather get really good at doing stand-up and then see where that led me. So, yeah, I'd love to do some stuff that helps my stand-up. Like if, Chris Hardwick wants to book me on at midnight, or if some people want to get me on some late-night shows doing sets or, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
I'd love to do that. And at some stage, what my aim is, my hope is that maybe at the end of this tour, we might record it and, sell the special to even like to Netflix or to Amazon or one of those places where people can just see the show in its entirety. And I'd rather kind of concentrate on that and get people to see what it is that I actually do, rather than be doing something else and then people coming out and going, you're the guy who spins the wheel on the thing or, does the blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, I'm telling my stories about the Outback Steakhouse. And they're like, this is not what we thought this was going to
be. Who were the comedians that you were following, growing up?
Billy Connolly. Do you know who Billy Connolly is?
Yeah, we talked about that last time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
you know what, more specifically, how about American comedians?
Okay, George Carlin
was
first and foremost. George Carlin was probably the first American comedian I ever heard. Bob Newhart. Because what you've got to realize is that we weren't seeing a lot of comedy on TV or anything. Yeah. We got the occasional episode of the David Letterman show. I remember last time I came here, one of the most exciting things in my life was I was here the week after Emo Phillips. Emo Phillips may have been the first person or the second person I ever saw do stand-up. I remember seeing him on Letterman, all those years ago.
Sure, yeah.
And I'd never really seen anyone actually do stand-up.
Yeah.
I'd heard it on records. I'd heard a Billy Connolly record. I'd heard but I'd never actually seen what it looks like, So that sort of stuff was pretty exciting. Bob Newhart, Button Down Mind of Bob Newhart was certainly an album that I remember when I went and played the Ice House in Pasadena, and those albums were recorded there on that stage, 50 years ago. That venue's been there, and that was really amazing to me. And then the usual Richard Pryor, Bill Hicks, and then I guess it became. Yeah, the more you could access stuff, the broader my interest became. People like Mitch Hedberg and guys like that who I just adored.
There was a
Paula Poundstone, people like that. It was really interesting. I know that all got a bit weird and messy at some stage, but I remember being on a plane when I was 16 or 17. This is where you would hear comedy. So I was on a plane and they used to have a comedy channel on the in-house thing.
Oh, yeah.
And that was where I was hearing most of the comedy. And Paula Poundstone had this bit about the pilot announcing to the, on people on the left, if you look over the left.
Right.
And then it was this whole thing about people on the left. I hate the people on the right. And it was, if anyone could ever find her routine about the airplane announcement, it was one of my favorite routines for years. It just made me laugh so much.
I didn't expect that Will Anderson would tell me today that he used to laugh his tail off to Paula Poundstone.
Paula Poundstone, Whoopi Goldberg. There was this Whoopi Goldberg.
Who no one even knows anymore did stand up,
right.
by the way.
And she did this like Broadway show. Something Fontaine, Why Am I Straight, or something like that it was called. And so I had that album and I listened to it. She does a couple of character pieces, but there's a really good
old lady.
Yeah, and there's like a really funny like a funny abortion bit, like something that I found so edgy at this stage that someone could talk about that sort of stuff. I remember at Montreal at the gala about 4 years ago, I guess, Whoopi Goldberg was hosting my gala. And, I met her afterwards, and it was one of those moments in my life where I was like, oh, wow. Like, when I was not doing this, like, you were...
Yeah.
Like, I was listening to you thinking, wow, I'd like to do that. And now we're doing a gig together. It's pretty cool.
Are there any other names you could think of that are similar to that? You saw Whoopi long ago and then right in front of you?
Yeah, I mean, well, Louis C.K., when the first time I gigged with Louis, that was pretty, even similar. Even though I discovered Louis probably once I'd started doing comedy, he'd been a guy that I'd admired for so many years.
Yeah.
So to be able to gig with him. John Cleese. I grew up watching Fawlty Towers and Monty Python and stuff. In fact, I think the first full-length comedy album I ever heard was my friend Peter Shepard. His parents had a copy of... it was The Life of Brian, and on record, not even the movie. There was like a record version of The Life of Brian, which is different to the movie, by the way, if you can find them. They're different jokes, kind of like the Anchorman, where they brought out the different joke version.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bit like that. There's different jokes on the recording that there is in the movie. And I got to perform with John Cleese, and they'd said that, so he was hosting this gala that I was doing, and he came on from one side of the stage and you came on from the other side of the stage, and I was like, am I not going to get to meet John Cleese? I can't be this close not actually get to meet him, right? And they're like, oh, no, you're not allowed to engage with him, and you're not allowed to blah, blah, blah. And in my head, I'm like, oh, really? Anyway, so I did my set, and we're doing 2 shows that night. So I did my set. And my set, it was very, I'm not going to use false modesty. Yeah. It was just one of those nights, and the second show wasn't the same. But I was on a lineup that night with Louis, with Dylan Moran, who's one of the greatest comedians that I've ever worked with. With Martin Short was on that night. Wow. Margaret Cho was on. Russell Howard from the UK, who people might know, really brilliant stand-up comedian who plays stadiums over there. And for whatever reason, I just had one of those sets where, bang, it worked. From the get-go, it just flew. Mm-hmm. I had a great set. And so afterwards, the crowd are kind of going a bit wild, and they bring you out for your, bow and that sort of thing. And I just was like, screw it. And I ran across the stage and I just hugged John Cleese. I was like, I don't care. Yeah. I don't care if this is inappropriate. I've just had a really great gig with a lot of my heroes, and now I'm going to hug John Cleese in front of 3,000 people.
Did he react well?
He was great with it. And you know what? We spent... between the 2 shows, we then ended up having a big chat about comedy, and he was very nice to me. And a couple of weeks later, he said something very nice in an article that we still use in our press release.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was it was one of those moments where he was asked, obviously, about Australian comedy.
I was going to say, did he say your name or just say that Aussie fellow?
No, so it was one of those things where he's being interviewed for a tour, and it was. I know how this would have happened because I get it. It would be the same as if someone asked me here about who do you like who does comedy here. Mm-hmm. I would mention someone I worked with last night because I'd be pretty much the person that I could think of, right? Yeah. So they've obviously asked him about who do you like, and he said there's this brilliant young Australian comedian called Will Anderson who's one of the best young comedians in the world, and we use that all the time, that quote. Will Anderson is one of the best young comedians in the world. John Cleese. I'm like, Will Anderson is one of the only Australian comedians I could think of on the spot. Will Anderson.
I know he's the greatest from meeting him for 1 hour. The best.
Yeah, exactly.
The best. What first year you came to the United States?
So about 4 years ago. I can't quite. Oh, well, when I first came, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, no, 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah, maybe even longer than that now. I remember I did a gig in New York. It was about 10 years ago. I'd played Just for Laughs in Montreal, and the day after I did a gig in New York, which was the first time that I'd played in America.
So now, growing up in Australia, and then now you've been here about 4 years. First time, as you said, 10 years ago or so. How have like the stereotypes? We were talking beforehand, before we started recording, about how you've whether you like it or not, whether you stepped up to this position or not, doing interviews and meeting people here, you were inevitably like a spokesperson,
right.
almost.
It's true.
And the information for Australia.
And it's amazing because when you travel overseas, of course, what you don't realize is that you are, particularly because I am doing interviews and stuff like that, you become a bit of a spokesperson for Australia. People think you're an expert in Australia. I'm just from there. It doesn't mean I know everything about
I was
there.
thinking about this last night. Like, if this was reversed and you were asking me questions about the United States, I've never been to California.
Right.
I have no idea. I know as much as you would know from watching television or reading or, I've never been to Texas. Don't ask me about the South. Well, how are people different in the South? I know every stereotype you know.
Right.
I don't know.
And that's the interesting thing about Australia for me. Like, at least I can speak to all those things because having toured there for, nearly 20 years, there isn't many places in Australia that I haven't been. Okay. And I do know a lot about that. But I don't know anything about koalas. And people are fascinated by koalas. Yeah. They're like, tell us another thing. So I now have koala facts. Yeah. I've studied a little bit so that at least if somebody says, tell us something about koalas, I can drop a few koala facts on them. 90% of them have chlamydia. Yeah. There you go. That's my koala fact.
That's all you really need to know.
Yeah. They're high most of the time and most of them have chlamydia.
So you must have had some sort of idea of what the United States was, and all of our stereotypes before you got here.
Yeah, I guess. Here's what I would say is that the difference between the two is, I get a lot of stereotypes here because all you guys know about Australia is Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas we have been inundated with such a wide variety of American culture from the moment we were born that you don't really have that same thing. You don't have we don't have a homogenized idea of what you guys are like. Now, if I was going to go to the stereotypes of, what are they? You're loud, obnoxious, arrogant. Everyone loves guns.
Yeah.
You love to eat. Right. You love to eat, you love to shoot things, and you're loud. Mm-hmm. But that's not true, of course. There's such a rich tapestry of people, in this country that some of them are like that and some of the places are the complete opposite of like that. And you'll be in a room and some people will be exactly like that and the person sitting next to them will be the opposite of that.
Yeah.
I think we have more a sense of the dichotomy of America than you have about Australia because, we've watched everything from Arnold Schwarzenegger movies to Woody Allen movies. Yeah. Wes Anderson's an American, in the same way as The Rock is. You know what I mean? We got all those various sort of cultural influences. So I don't think that we quite have the same cliched idea about you guys. But there's still cliches. The love of guns and war and, eating. Yeah. They'd be the big ones, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's so... It says a lot about. It does really say a lot about American culture in that that people from other parts of the world know so much about us, and that you just said is kind of almost forced on you from birth.
Right.
I could go to Australia and people, no one would care.
Right. No one would care.
What is it like? No.
You
were saying to
me,
and
you wouldn't feel like you were a million miles away from home because you'd be able to go to McDonald's and you'd be able to go to Burger King and you'd be able to go to Starbucks and you'd be able to watch American movies. The only thing you wouldn't be able to do is go to the Outback Steakhouse because we don't have those in Australia.
What? It's just called Steakhouse, right?
Yeah, and it's in the Outback, in the middle of the Outback where there's nobody. We have one restaurant.
Table for one?
Yeah, table for one.
It's
interesting. Modern Family just did an episode in Australia.
They did,
and it aired last night. And so we always have in Australia we have a debate about our sense and place in the world every time an American TV show makes something about it.
Of course.
So because they always go to the cliches.
Yeah.
the Simpsons episode in Australia is still one of the most hated, despised, and debated episodes of anything that's ever happened. Because like Australians are like, well, we're not like. I'm like, have you ever watched The Simpsons? Every time they go to a different country, they like play up every horrible stereotype. Yeah. These are some of the smartest people in the world. You know how they deliberately get things wrong to provoke. That's what they're doing. Right. But Modern Family, you know, it goes to all those sort of cliches, you know, like everything's dangerous and it will kill you, and like, you know, Bondi Beach, everyone's, you know, like, I mean, they shot basically where, you know, my house is in Sydney.
Oh, okay.
So like, it becomes this cultural debate of like, what does America think of us? Like, what is the idea of what they think Australians are?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. I wrote some things down here. We're running out of time, so I want to get to them here. The
problem is that I talk too much. You did say that. You did say that beforehand. You said I wrote down some questions, but you talk too much.
Here's what I need to do. I need to go to my other set of notes here. I want to talk a little sports.
Okay, yeah, let's talk sports.
Now, remind me here. I also heard you talk on another one of my absolute favorite podcasts with Jay Larson.
Oh, the Crab Feast. Yeah, that was fun.
That was really
Those
good.
guys are brilliant. Now, I'm going to try to get Jay on my podcast, Tofop, but Ryan Stickler's been on it. It was one of the most popular episodes. It was a really fun episode. They're cool cats.
And you guys talked about cricket quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about a little bit of sports
here.
Yeah, sure. What's the most obvious similarity between cricket and baseball?
That sometimes not a lot of things happen. Sometimes you got to make your own fun.
Okay.
I always describe cricket as it's physical chess. Like, a lot of it's in the brain. You know, and the thing about baseball, like, I think without knowing much about baseball, is that it's not just about your capacity to hit a ball when it's thrown. It's about your capacity to not get inside your own head, to know when to wait, to know when to not swing, to know what shot to play, to then be able to pick the right ball, to not get thought out and that sort of thing. Cricket is very much like that, in that the actual action, the thing that happens, there's a lot of mental stuff that goes before that and around that you then have to get out of your own way when it happens.
Now, did you have a family member that played?
My dad played at a pretty high level, and I think probably if he hadn't been a farmer, he might have, you know, played it even at a higher level. But my dad played, and he played at home until he was like in his mid-50s, nearly 60.
Played and made money? Or just
no, just played like in the country leagues at that stage. But, you know, he played like state level. Like, you know, he was a really good cricketer. Yeah.
And you played a little bit or not?
Yeah, but I was terrible. I mean, I played right up until when I was 16, 17. But I was, I mean, when I say I made a few like local sort of representative teams and stuff, but I was never the star player. Never. I was an Australian rules football player. That was my sport. And I probably, if I hadn't hurt myself, I possibly could have played professionally. Like, I mean, it was something that I was considering when I was a teen. I was literally thinking that perhaps I would be a professional footballer for a living, but I kind of hurt my back when I was 16 or so, and that kind of put the end to that, because I wasn't so good that, you know, like, it was one of those things where, as I've often said, because people say to me, they're like, you know, do you regret that you didn't play? At my best, if I got the best out of myself, I might have played 3 or 4 years. I might have played like maybe 50 games if I'd got the best out of me that I ever could have.
And how long do the games go normally? How long could a game last of cricket? Is it a game
cricket,
match?
You mean? Cricket?
Yeah.
So there's 3 forms of cricket. So here's what I would say is like, there's the long form, test match cricket, which is my favourite, 5 days. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It used to be open-ended. You used to be able to play for as long as you wanted until you got a result. But now it's 5 days.
There are a lot of people hearing this going, baseball just seems like it lasts that long.
Yeah. No, they have 3 forms of cricket. There's 50-50, one-day cricket. So that's 50 overs each. And then that's an overs 6 ball. Anyway, this is detail no one needs. But and then there's 20-20, which is the shortest version of the game, which is the kind of just the bash and smash version.
No, I have another one of my jobs is I work at some of the stadiums around town here, walking up and down as a beer vendor.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Cold beer here.
Uh-huh.
Are there vendors at live sporting events such as cricket?
Yes, but not beer.
No, what is sold?
Like, you know, snack foods and all that sort of hot pies.
Hot pies.
Hot pies, yeah, meat pies. That's a big football thing, but not so much a cricket thing. But snacks and drinks and stuff like that. But you can buy beer, but you have to go to the bar, inside the stadium to buy beer. And you can take them to your seat. But they just don't have vendors coming around because people would mug them and take their beer.
You think so?
That's what I always say about at the basketball and stuff here, they have like the kiss cam and the dance cam, and it's wonderful, and it's a really nice part of the sport. No Australian sports have that. You know why? Because they would install it and they put in all that technology, and then on the very first day, somebody would ruin it by getting their cock out. On the first day. Literally the first day, there would be some kid dancing and some guy behind would get his cock out and he would ruin it for everybody. If they had a guy handing out beer, some guy would mug that guy and take his beer and ruin it for everybody.
Oh, that's so perfect. Oh, that's so perfect. I saw, are you a golf fan at all?
I mean, I watch it. I don't play it.
Yeah, I'm rarely watch it or play it, but it did catch my eye that Tiger Woods was, one of his kids is playing T-ball. Do you know what T-ball is?
It's like softball, but like it's on a stick, right? You just hit it off a stick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was watching his kid play T-ball the other day with his ex-wife and his current girlfriend, the skier, Lindsey Vonn.
Oh, well, good on him.
You ever been in a situation like that?
No, I've never been married anyway, so that helps. Certainly, I would never bring some new girlfriend to meet my ex-girlfriend unless I needed that new girlfriend murdered. And none of the girls that I've ever dated would come to watch T-ball with me, so...
Is there somebody in your life right now? How are the American women treating you well?
No, there's not. I've been kind of... I was going to say I've been kind of single. That's not true. I lived with a girl, my best friend in the world still. We lived together for nearly 10 years, and we broke up about 18 months ago after like 10 years of on and off and trying to make it work with a touring comedian and a girl who doesn't want to tour do it in comedy. And so basically when I was spending more and more time overseas and it wasn't working, we kind of decided that we would let it go. But she still lives at my house in Sydney and has done for a year and a half. We've got like 4 pets together and stuff, and she came down to Melbourne and hung out for a while. We're still very close, so I have not been in a sort of situation or a position to move on, but I must admit that
American girls
haven't really dated any American. Well, I mean, I've been on a few dates, but I haven't really.
Come on, man! I know that they freaking we have a mutual friend that we talked about last time, Brad Blanks. You know him a little bit.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yes.
And every woman that ever meets Brad,
right?
I mean, he's a charming fellow.
He is a charming fellow. There's no doubt about that.
Let's be honest here. The accent. American women love the accent.
Well, you know what? I find at the gigs and stuff, people are always like, we could have kept listening to you talk. We love the way you talk. But I haven't really seen it, translate into... It's not like I've got lines of women outside my door or whatever. Maybe I'm putting off an unavailable vibe or something. I'm not sure what it is.
What are you doing wrong?
You know what? I think it's probably the fact that I talk about the fact that I have osteoarthritis in my hips during my show.
I didn't know that. I read that about you.
Yeah. My hips click when I walk. People don't. That's not sexy. What? No girl wants to hear that.
That's not supposed to happen. You're in your 30s still, right?
It's no, just turned 40. Turned 40 in January.
Okay.
So it's a degenerative hip condition, but there's 2 things. It's firstly, my dad just got his hip replaced, so it's a genetic thing.
Yeah.
But secondly, Australian rules football, which is what I played, and soccer players, anyone who played those sports, basically, if you have this thing on your hip socket, there's a certain way with kicking and karate, martial arts and stuff like that if you have this, you are very susceptible to osteoarthritis because of the way the leg works. Your leg's not meant to kick that far, apparently, technically.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that. What other things do I want to mention here? What is your status with your podcast right now?
So
singular, plural. What are you doing? Which ones are you doing right now?
So I have one called Willosophy, which is occasional.
Yeah.
Which is where I just get mostly a famous Australian celebrity, but they're interesting people. They're not necessarily stand-up comedians. In fact, I don't think I may have done one comedian who was like an old kind of comedy guy, but there's a dude from advertising and an actor and a bunch of people, and all I really ask them is whether they have a philosophy of life, whether they have something they believe in, and then we use that as a starting point just to talk about life. It's not a straight interview. Often, I never get to talk to them about the thing they're actually famous for. We just talk about life and, what they think about life. But my main podcast is called TOFOP, T-O-F-O-P, as I think I mentioned last time. It's named after Russell Crowe's band.
That's right.
And which got mentioned again this morning.
That's right.
I'm an expert on Russell Crowe now. But it's pretty regular now. Like we've just clocked up the 100th episode or whatever of that, and we kind of did nearly 100 of the old one. So TOFOP was me and this guy Charlie, and he had to leave because he's an actor and he got a job, and they said he couldn't do the podcast anymore.
Okay. Good for Charlie.
And then I've done another 100 or so episodes with guest Charlies. So at the moment it's called FOFOP, as in pretend faux, alternative universe, FOFOP. But at some stage Charlie will come back. Charlie and I just did a live show at the Melbourne Comedy Festival. We did a live TOFOP.
Oh, okay.
So he hasn't been on the show for about 18 months. And the TV network said we could do a live one, but we couldn't record it and put it out there. But they didn't mind if we just did a live one in front of a live audience because it's a content thing, basically.
Sure.
They don't want this guy in this family drama, talking about, which Batman he would fucking order or whatever. The stuff that we talk about in the podcast, right? So they said he could do this live one, and it was amazing. We put the tickets on sale, and we sold 350 tickets to this live show in 6 minutes.
Wow.
Like it sold out in 6 minutes. People were mad. It was like we were the Rolling Stones. I've never sold anything that quickly. Like I sold 22,000 tickets at the Melbourne Comedy Festival this year, and I never sold 350 of them in 6 minutes.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it was cool. It was a really
People
fun night.
For it, huh?
Yeah, and so we did like an hour. We did kind of 40, 50 minutes with him, just him and I, and then we brought out a bunch of people who've been guest Charlies over the years to kind of be in it. So it was really great fun.
Maybe you can get that guy who does Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, you know what? We have spoken about getting him to be a guest Charlie. So hopefully that will happen in the next couple of months.
Spoiler. I do have one more question about sports. Right. I'm curious about. We're in the middle of the first round of the NHL hockey playoffs.
I bought a hockey T-shirt today because my ex-girlfriend, her nickname for me, what she's always called me, is Wild. And they're called the Wild, right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like in a souvenir shop. In fact, here we go. Look, I can even prove that I'm not making up this story because I came straight from there to here. So I just bought a...
You bought a Minnesota Wild T-shirt?
Minnesota Wild T-shirt.
While you're pulling... Oh, look at that. You got a green one.
A green one.
Team colors.
So this is for my ex, and it just says Wild. And it's got like the... Minnesota and like the
it's got our made-up logo that isn't really anything.
Right.
It's an animal with Minnesota stuff in it.
Yeah, so they're officially my hockey team now, based on that.
So my question is someone, grew up in Australia, obviously didn't play hockey.
Yeah.
What do you know about hockey? Could you describe it to someone?
Okay, so firstly, here's what I know about hockey is that you call it hockey here, not what we call it in Australia. Ice hockey, because field hockey's hockey in Australia, but over here, that one was bashed out of me pretty quick.
Yeah.
Like I can say pretty much what I like. I've been to comedy clubs and I've talked about religion and I've talked about guns, and normally people, even if they don't agree with me, are very accepting. The only thing that really got people rankled was when I kept calling it ice hockey. They were like, no, it's hockey. It's not ice hockey. I'm like, okay, perfect. I get that. First, secondly, I have watched all 3 Mighty Ducks movies, so I've got some knowledge. I love it because the sport that I love, Australian rules football, the players, a lot of the players have similar physiques, like big guys, like 6 foot, 3, 4, whatever, massive athletes. But the thing that I love about like going to the hockey and watching it is how, firstly, it's very physical. Like, they can come at you from any direction, which is what I like about Australian rules football as well. It's not in lines. It's in, it's a 360-degree game. Yep. But the skill of those guys going down and getting back up again on skates, I find amazing. And my favorite thing about it is the bit where you can just drop your gloves and fight with the dude. Like, that is one of every sport should have that. In every sport, they should have a bit where you can just go, look, there's a circle on the ground, cricket, Oh my God. Like that'd break up 5 days. If there was just one circle on the ground where the batsman could like drop his gloves and go and punch the bowler and then just get back to it.
Yeah.
I'm totally into that.
Everyone gets out of the way.
Right.
And lets them finish.
It's I like it. It's a bit of respect. Let's not just have fights all the time. We'll get this done in the proper place, and then we'll both go and sit in our sin bins, and then we'll come back.
You know, and the beauty of it is many times these guys are actually friends off the ice.
Right.
Yeah, and they'll shake hands afterwards.
Oh, yeah, no, that's just their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My job's to be the goon.
Right.
Oh, I love that. So have you gone to hockey game? Ice hockey games?
I have also seen the movie Goon, which I really, really enjoyed.
I'll recommend that as well. I liked it.
It's
Yeah.
fun.
Uh-huh.
I was lucky enough in Montreal this year to have lunch with Jay. I'm not going to get his last name. Jay Barish. Anyway,
Baruchel?
Baruchel,
Yeah.
Baruchel. Anyway, but people know who I mean. Like Seth Rogen's mates from the movies.
Yeah.
But he's in that film Goon, and which
that's right.
I really think is a fantastic. It's a really fun,
And
funny
Sean
film.
William Scott, who's
Yeah.
originally from Minnesota.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That's a good Minnesota fact for you. What other celebrities are from Minnesota, so that I can get a bit of a sense of that?
Judy Garland.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And what about comics? Is there like a famous?
Louis Anderson.
Oh, Louis Anderson's
Your
Minnesota.
uncle, Louis
yeah.
Anderson?
Yeah, my uncle.
You should know that.
I should be selling more tickets.
Yeah.
I should be going around talking about Uncle Louis, shouldn't I?
Exactly. I actually asked people, I went out on Twitter and asked if people had any questions for you, and one person did ask if you know Lonnie Anderson.
Oh.
And do you know who that is?
Burt Reynolds' ex-wife?
Yes.
Whatever.
From WKRP in Cincinnati. She was an actress.
Yes.
Yeah, Burt Reynolds, exactly.
There you go.
So she's from Minnesota, but not...
no relation.
No relation, and also she's not a comic. Let's see. Well, Mitch Hedberg, you mentioned him, of course.
So Mitch Hedberg... Oh, so I didn't know that he was from... He was actually from here.
Oh, yeah.
So was this the club where he would have started out then? Is that kind of the...
He did some work here, yeah.
Yeah.
And another club in town, I believe.
I love Mitch Hedberg. In fact, I don't know if this is true, but I know that his wife was trying to make a documentary about, his life and put together a lot of... And I may have done the last ever interview with Mitch. Now, I don't know if this is true. I know when they contacted me, they were suggesting that it may be the last interview with Mitch. I was doing a documentary at Montreal, just before he died, and we interviewed him for the documentary, and so they were trying to get access to this, this footage so they could use it in this film, and she said it may be the last recorded interview that we have, and so again, I'm not 100% sure if that is true, but it may be true. So no, he was a real hero of mine, and I didn't know that he was from here. I knew that he had spent some time here, but I didn't actually know he was from here.
And of course, Nick Swardson.
Oh yeah, no, it's cool.
Yeah. Who's coming here and sold out 3 shows here a month or 2 from now in they put the tickets out on a pre-sale for the Acme Insiders. Let this be a tip for everyone listening to this who's not signed up for the Acme Insider list. Get on there because when Nick Swardson tickets went on sale to the insiders, it completely sold out before the general public was ever even notified.
People, in general, with comedy clubs, there's a lot of, particularly clubs like this that run such a good operation. And, it's the same, in Cleveland when I was playing there. If you get on some of those mailing lists, I know in Cleveland when Chappelle came to town, again, the tickets didn't go on sale to the public. Yeah. Because the people on the insider mailing list were like, Dave Chappelle? Yep, okay, we're going. So get on. That's what I'm saying. Let's give that a plug. That's good.
Damn right. Damn right.
However, for Will Anderson tickets, you can get them at the door.
Well, if you want to walk up, I heard the ticket sales are pretty good. But if people want to come to the Late Show Friday, I think there are a few available.
Yeah, few available tickets.
Are you now? Yeah, we definitely got to wrap it up because I need to go pick up my children from school.
Well, that's a good reason to finish your podcast.
For the afternoon. Yeah, exactly. But I have 2 more quick questions here.
Cool.
You've done radio, you've done some acting, the hosting, written some books.
Yes.
You've got the CDs, comedy. Are you selling anything? Do you bring anything along to sell
bring
shows
anything.
these days?
No.
Nothing?
I don't for 2 reasons. And no disrespect to people who do it, but I kind of, my attitude is very much that I want to put everything that I have into the show. And the thing that I realize when you're selling stuff is you've got to do another show almost. It's another half an hour or whatever of you being up and being vibey and selling stuff and for me, Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I had the energy to do that. But now, like a double show, like a double on a Friday kills me.
Yeah.
Like I have to sleep all day Saturday just to get through the double on the, on New Year's Eve, I was in Denver, and there was like the 3 show New Year's Eve. You got the all ages show at 4 o'clock, and proper all ages show too. Like, I mean, kids, like 80 kids under probably like 12 in the audience, and I've got to do an hour of clean material. There's 400 people, 500 people in this room, completely sold out. New Year's Eve, and adults and children, and 2 Australians in the room. And I'm like, why did you guys come to this? There's like a 7 o'clock show and like a 10 o'clock show. You could have come to those. They're going to be fun and sweary and drinky.
Right.
And they were like, we're from Australia. We did not believe that you could go an hour without swearing. We were like, we just wanted to witness it. We wanted to see what you did.
How did it go?
Oh, it turns out I can, but I choose not to.
Did you use any of your filthy material and just change some words?
Nah, not really. I mean, I've done 19-hour shows, so over the years, there's definitely stuff that, there's funny things that my parents said when I was growing up and material like that works that I just don't do anymore because it's not where my comedy is and what I want to be talking about on stage anymore. But, the jokes are actually still funny and they still work.
No, I am curious that... should you be back in Australia right now searching for Flight 370? I know that
look,
government
it's not my responsibility.
It's not?
No.
Okay.
No. Look, if they'd left it to me, then...
when I'm up past midnight and it's noon back there or whatever, down there, I'm seeing these, all these press conferences.
Mm.
And
no. We kept thinking we found it. Turns out we hadn't found it.
Found it.
No, I'm not sure they're ever going to find it because it's. I mean, and with all due respect to the people who died, it's a tiny plane in the middle of a vast ocean.
Yeah.
Like it's so far down. Like it's over 3.5 kilometers. Like it's miles down on the bottom of the ocean, if it's even there. The only person who really goes down that far is James Cameron. That's our only hope.
Yeah.
Our only hope is that James Cameron will find it.
So
don't ask me, ask James Cameron is my point.
Coming in 2018,
right.
James Cameron's Flight 370.
I mean, he could do it. Mm-hmm. He's the only guy who could do it. I mean, I think there's so much of the floor even when you get down that far, there is, I think, almost half a kilometer, which is there's half a mile, maybe, let's just say that,
sure.
of fish shit. Seriously, that's what happens. It's all this just dark, that's what it is. That's the bottom of the ocean floor.
You don't want to open your mouth down there.
No. I mean, don't dive down there.
Accidentally take a gulp.
Yeah. It'd be good if they actually do find it and see if those fancy watches, people have those fancy watches that are they're tested to 3. It'd be amazing if they actually find it and all the watches are still working. And well, you know what? It did actually eventually come in handy. You're right.
Turns out this was nothing more than a Casio commercial. Perfect.
Thank you.
Will, that's it.
My pleasure.
We'll talk next time. This was fun.